All right, buddies, welcome into the Noll Road. We have Steelers Vikings preview for you today. What must they do to return from Ireland at 3-1? Who are the players they must slow down and the coaches and schemes they got to figure out? Should they be a nearly field goal dog against a Carson Wentz-led Vikings team? What are the key stats that define the Steelers right now as we get ready to wrap up the first month of the season? How concerning are these stats that just got to be better? Here we go.
Van to the corner of the end zone. Oh, for a touchdown!
Yeah, buddy, welcome in. I'm Gavin Dawson, 25-year sports radio veteran. With me, as always, the all-academic SEC lineman at Kentucky, New Bear Lesniewski. How the hell are you, buddy?
Hey, did you say schemes or schemes? Can we just get a little shout out to Paul Skeens going sub 2 again? Can we talk about 99, 2000 Pedro? What is it? 13, 14 Kershaw? What's your favorite Randy Johnson? None of them, except for maybe Dwight Gooden. And I'll hear you on the pitch counts and the complete games but I mean, nobody dominant like this guy. So the Noll Road, Pittsburgh Steelers fans love their Buccos. Let's go Bucks, relegate nutting. Paul Skeens, baby. Let's talk Steelers.
Man, he has set an absolute gold standard for greatness out of college, and cheers to Paul Skeens, and here's to all Steelers sports entities being able to live up to what he's accomplished. The Noll Road brought to you by Bet Online, up to $250 in free bets if you use the sign-up link in the description of this very video. The Steelers are the 2.5-point dog. I'm hammering this thing. I've been watching Carson Wentz tape all week long. He's still a clown. He's never evolved from what he was as a rookie when it comes to poise, composure, decision-making in the pocket. So I think the Steelers defense finally starts to get it figured out this week here against the Vikings and Carson Wentz. How about you? How'd that point spread strike you, New Bear?
It's really interesting too, because everyone's so focused on renegade. You're going to get a renegade in Ireland and all this stuff they're doing to accommodate and make it feel like a home game. That's one of the things that gets lost in this sometimes, is that, do you really care if it's Jacksonville? How much of a home field advantage do they have anyway? No, I mean, this is I'm still going to call it Heinz Field. I can't do it, but Acrisure and everything that they do, it's going to be really cool to see. The Rooney families wanted to do this for a long time, and when you see this point spread, I'm actually surprised there hasn't been more action on it, pushing it, up or down half a point one way or the other. I think everything you just said about Wentz is as good of a starting point as any, but I also know that if you clicked on the thumbnail for this show, you saw what? Jordan Mason and Cam Hayward, and this really starts up front, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and if we can get into key matchups at what's called in Dublin the Croker. Okay, this is Croke Field, Croke Park, but the locals call it the Croker, and you can do your best Irish accent. But yeah, I think Minnesota runs it a lot. They're one of the few teams that's aiming for a 50-50 split. I don't know how that changes if they get J.J. McCarthy back permanently, but I think the Benton, Ekwale, Wyatt Black trio is key here, along with your linebackers, Cole Holcomb. I don't know if Jawan Bentley starts to get involved here. Patrick Queen, I guess the Peyton Wilson experiment as far as being an every down linebacker is at least put on pause for now. So I think that's the biggest matchup, is when that game last week against Cincinnati got into the second half, he killed him. He wound out the clock. And if you cannot stop Jordan Mason, I think you're going to have a long day in Ireland, or a long morning, depending on, when and where you're watching it.
Last year, everyone was so impressed with the resurrection of Sam Darnold, and I hope he sent a check back to Kevin O'Connell. I mean, you talk about becoming a $100 million man based on a get right, even with the seeing ghosts down the stretch. They threw it about 100 more times than they ran it last year, even with a healthy Aaron Jones. Remember, you had Ty Chandler, Cam Akers behind the ageless, really, until he went down a few weeks ago, Aaron Jones. You are right, though. They're not throwing it as much. They're trying to protect JJ early. They only threw it 20 times last week with Carson Wentz. But some of that is by design, in as much as if the running game's going good and you got Carson Wentz throwing up 120-plus point QB ratings on 17 out of 20, and he doesn't have to do that much. Let's also not forget they get Jordan Addison back off suspension.
Yeah, that's huge. And then you got to consider Adam Thielen. Jalen Naylor has evolved a little bit or emerged, I guess, in the absence of Addison. And then you look at their tight ends with the star Hawkinson, and then their second tight end, Elliott, I believe is his last name. He scored against the Bengals as well, and he is a physical guy. Like the thing that I think what's Oliver? There you go, Oliver. The thing that defines this Minnesota team across the board is just quality with a diverse skill set. Like their defenders can stop the run, they can cover. Their weapons, other than Jefferson, can either block, catch, or run it. Like they're all really good football players, and I think it just gives Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores a set of chess pieces that they can deploy across multiple formations, multiple scheme types that are always going to be tasking and testing, the opposition, not only the personnel, but I think the coaches have their work cut out for them. I hadn't thought about this as far as a key matchup, but everybody's talking about the coaching difference here, Newberry. It's going to be a big test for the Steelers upstairs as well.
Just to put a bow on that wide receiver room, they got the rookie that they are really high on. That I loved coming out of Maryland, Ty Felton, who's a guy who caught 100 ball, 96, I think. And he was one of those guys whose production like literally doubled, like 5 catches, then 25, then 50, then 100, and then, commensurate across the board, yards and touchdowns. And he's a guy who hasn't even really gotten into the mix yet. And that's even with Addison being suspended. That's how little they've thrown the ball. That's how much they've had success in the run game. O'Connell, all intents and purposes, has earned the genius, right? When you do the things that he's able to do, regardless of who's under center. Guy goes, Kirk Cousins, legitimate Sunday guy. I think people like him more than he is good, like him as a person, love him on Netflix, and want to root for him. And he has stepped up, regular season fantasy football paycheck line, maybe not so much in the postseason, but he goes down and they almost don't miss a beat. He resurrects Sam Darnold. He makes Carson Wentz look like a Pro Bowler last week. So coming into this, yeah, for sure, offensively, especially from a, let's just call it scheme into fireworks perspective. And then the other side of the coin, I'm sure you got it queued up. I know you want to talk about 7-8 mug into, is that NTT? Is that Tampa 2? Is that half quarters and half 2? Some of the stuff that went viral out of what Flores is doing pre-snap into post-snap reads is probably the most fascinating thing from an all-22 perspective league-wide.
Yeah. Let me get to that in just a second. I did want to stop down on wide receivers. Okay, so let's talk about Vikings wide receivers against Steelers defensive backs and how you line that thing up, because this is going to be a very stiff test when you look at what they can do. And obviously the potential return of Joey Porter Jr. could be big here. The return of Deshaun Elliott, I feel like they've really missed him in weeks 2 and 3. But how would you match that up if you were going to have one of the Steelers corners traveling with Jefferson?
Right. And the thing is, what you want to say is you're going to make the decision, right? Because coming into this year, we said, who's going to travel? Is it going to be Ramsey? Is it going to be JPJ or Slay? Because Ramsey was supposed to be this Swiss Army knife going top to bottom at all 3 levels of the defense. So do you take Slay and say, hey, go run with probably the best wide receiver in the league, and then you give Porter a little bit of help with Addison or whoever else is backside, or if they come across and team up in the slot? The challenge with this is Joey Porter Jr. coming back from injury that they were talking about maybe holding him till the bye because they wanted to make sure he was 100% right. Is he on a pitch count? And then do you want him being stressed by Justin Jefferson to the point where we see him back on the injury report next week?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of important decisions to be made there, and we need answers quickly. Like over the next couple of weeks, all this stuff has to come together to start giving you confidence, because before too long, we're going to be coming up on mid-season. And I hope that defensive health, Jabril Peppers, Holcomb instead of Wilson on rundowns, Y.A. Black emerging at nose tackle, I hope that can begin to remedy some of this stuff, because Man, I've been pouring over stats, and it is just exhausting and overwhelming in how many different categories the Steelers are one of the worst 6 teams in all of the NFL. And right now, your peers are some of the worst defenses around the league when you look at Miami and Chicago and Dallas and Tennessee. Like, that's your comps right now, and it is head-scratching. It's mind-numbing. But we need solutions now, and this Vikings team is not what you want to see because of their depth of skill players, their explosiveness, and then the quality of their scheme and a quality run game, a pretty good offensive line. There is a lot to test you here this week, and if your defense isn't significantly better, it's again going to look like on paper one of the 5 worst defenses in the NFL. Do you believe that's going to be their identity by the time we get to December, Newbear?
It can't be, because what we're talking about here is all of a sudden, I mean, look, these next 3 weeks, you have to at least go 2-1, if not 3-0, because we expect the Packers to be good. Suddenly the Colts are good out of nowhere. Hey, Danny Dimes. And oh, by the way, let's not forget, for Tomlin taking shots at the Colts last year, his message to the team was don't let Anthony Richardson make Joe Flacco get in the game, and then Joe Flacco comes in and torches you, and you find a way to lose that game, a game you should have won. Like, let's not just talk about how the Steelers are all of a sudden just going to roll into town and put the Colts into place when we have, as recent as last year, they weren't able to do that. So, all of a sudden now coming off of those, you go Chargers. The Bengals won't have Burrow again, but did the Bears show you enough? Then the Bills, Ravens, the Dolphins will probably be in fire sale mode by then. But then, Lions. I mean, there's a lot out there ahead of this team that isn't easy. So
no. And the schedule's been nice to give you some ramp up, but you've been kind of torched by some bottom half offenses out there. It's not like you're putting up these defensive numbers against Hall of Fame QBs.
Well, and you got to put the pressure on Baltimore, right? You have to, their start, schedule or no schedule, 1-2 is 1-2. And you have to take advantage of the ability to create some separation to the point where you're dictating terms going down the stretch.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, you mentioned that that viral clip of what kind of witchcraft Brian Flores has his defense going. Like, I was gonna say, if you can't handle Van Ginkel and Grenard, it's going to be a long day for you. But then you sort of look at this, and I guess you love the fact that you have Aaron Rodgers at least dissecting it. But I don't know how often he's seen stuff like this, Newbear. What do you make all this?
So count it. That's 8 up mug into 3 into 2 shell into. You could argue that half the field is quarters and half the field is 2. Brian McFadden did a really nice job of talking about this, where they're basically cutting the backside and trying to take that away completely. What's so crazy about this is none of that stuff matters if you get beat right off the snap, which they do, right? Your guys up front that you were talking about, you get so caught up in, oh, hey, what's the coverage pre-snap, post-snap? Do we need to change this protection? Do we need to change the play? Focus on the protection, because if you're not clean up front, you don't even get a chance to take a picture once the ball is snapped.
Yeah, and these guys, Van Ginkel and Grenard, I mean, look at him. Just Van Ginkel goes inside there. Grenard hits you with the spin move. And, watching this game and trying to find some plays to highlight what their defense does, it's like those guys are standing out consistently, and it really does bring Broderick Jones and Fautanu into the evaluation as far as a very, very key matchup. And I was seeing some stuff where Fautanu was even worse than Broderick Jones last week. Ben Roethlisberger is just destroying Broderick Jones on a podcast, and against a team like this and in an offense where you're already struggling to throw the ball down the field until it's absolute nut cut and crunch time, and you got to let that thing go. Aaron Rodgers is talking about our wide receivers and tight ends got to get open more often. to me, this has got to start with a run game that neutralizes their pass rush and sort of negates the games that Brian Flores is going to play. Jaylen Warren played more snaps last week than any game he's ever played in by 10%. I mean, he's been your leading receiver 2 games in a row. The Jaylen Warren usage rates are skyrocketing right now. I think you got to go with even more.
And literally every play, like plugs in his helmet. The the thing that's so interesting about this is you could ask anybody from AI to your favorite OC, and what they talk about when you talk about the keys to beating Brian Flores is something about the idea of winning on early downs, something about the idea of dictating terms, something about the idea of staying out of 3rd and long. A lot of cliche, but there's a reason that those things exist because they're true. And if you let him get into these places where he can just manipulate horizontal and vertical and play mind games, the biggest problem with Fatanu's tape, and this is true of Jones as well, is there's a lot of checks being made that they're not getting. There are changes being made where you see a tackle lean into a guard and say, what? Or what's the play? Or what do I do? Maybe. And if it's that far, then we're in real trouble. But I think it starts with just not hearing the call to the point where you can instantly click over and get what you're supposed to do, because you see guys late off the ball, which can't happen because the snap count and they don't. And you see guys slow to the point where they're making either false or wrong steps. And there's really bad tape out there because all the communications that we're talking about with the defensive backfield are way more glaringly apparent when you watch an offensive lineman just get beat like a rented mule.
Yeah, nothing's going to work if your offensive lineman can't handle these guys. I was going to jump forward. I wanted to ask you real quick about Mount Washington snaps. He's by far the 3rd most. It's, Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, then Washington. Okay, so the PFF numbers will tell you that Freiermuth is actually doing a better job in protection and in the run game blocking than Mount Washington. And Jonnu Smith is like by far the worst. I mean, he's basically a wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I clapped at some folks who were complaining about Broderick and Troy because there's an insert on some of those plays where Freiermuth is decleating former teammate Robert Spillane. And for all the much maligned, and look, I've been at the forefront of it. When you talk about long, lean, I might even go as far as to say assumed soft, 6'6", 260-pound Penn State tight ends, then you wonder why they're not taking advantage of the skill set first and foremost, meaning whole shots against Tampa 2, or even just against like straight 2, and even against non-traditional 2. And that was one of the other things I clapped about on Twitter, that, people are basically saying if they can't figure out, meaning the Steelers offense, Artie Smith, Aaron Rodgers, if you can't figure out what a Seattle or what the Jets or any of these other teams that we're talking about that they faced so far, Vrabel, are or are not doing in their post-snap adjustments, good luck against Brian Flores. So what that has to mean, what it becomes incumbent upon you to do, is to find ways to dictate terms. And there are plays to be made out there for Pat Freiermuth. They're not using him to his fullest potential. There are plays out there to be made for Darnell Washington. They're not using him straight away the way that we all thought they were going to be using him. Freiermuth belongs up the seam. Freiermuth has shown toughness in the slot and taking shots and hanging on and coming up with big time plays, moving the sticks. Aaron Rodgers has the ability to bumblebee ear holes, man. You're going to have to take some shots in this game just to get them to back the bleep off. And then at the same time with Washington, everyone wants to talk about how much 12 and 13 personnel. I kind of throw that out the window a little bit when you look at the rankings, because if it's Freiermuth and Jonnu, as much as I want to laud Freiermuth for how he stepped up and put his nose in, he ain't Mount Washington. So if it's 12 and it's 13, but it's not Mount Washington and he's playing sub 50% of the snaps, how about we try to solve one of the problems with this running game and let him go bang some heads.
Yeah, I'd say, well, I mean, they do run 12 the most in the entire NFL. It's interesting why you wouldn't want to give more of an imposing run look. I mean, if you really like what Freiermuth is doing, I get it. Put Freiermuth and Washington in there and try to help both of your tackles and really get this run game going to try to get Aaron Rodgers some more favorable looks on the back end until you get a better wide receiver too. I think what we've seen is what we're going to get over the next 3 games where you're depending on yards after catch in order to keep the chains moving. We got about 10 minutes left in the show, New Bear. I would love to dive in with these remaining minutes on why I am confident in the Steelers getting victory in Ireland. And it starts with Carson Wentz. Like I said at the top of the show, even though he's in, I think, his 8th or 9th season, this is 10th season. Wow. It's incredible how his awareness, poise, and composure is still low, and it looks like he's playing intimidated and scared like a rookie. Now, here's a good throw. This is some of the good Carson Wentz you can find amongst the incompletions, bad form, and sack taking because he's confused. This is one of the goods. Nice throw to Jefferson. I mean, and in a fairly tight window there. He found Jefferson a lot in big moments throughout this game. But what I was surprised watching this all 22 is the Vikings put up 48 points, but so much of it was off turnovers, short fields. Like there wasn't a lot of sustained drives and there wasn't a lot of big time throws from Carson Wentz that you would expect when you open up a 48-point box score.
I think I said 17 out of 20 earlier. I meant to say he was 70%. He was 14 out of 20, right? He did throw up, unless I'm completely dead ass wrong, I'm pretty sure he threw up like a plus 120 rating. It might even have been like an almost 130 rating. And when you look at
he barely misses Thielen on this, but do you see how like he's climbing the pocket like he's gonna run, and then he does a jump throw? Like, what has he been watching and studying throughout his career? There's no wonder it's a yard too far.
I mean, you know how you talk about guys don't come to the league and all of a sudden become more accurate. Like there's some things, some traits that just don't translate to Sunday. And I always talk about how Josh Allen, that's why you have to really appreciate, and Lamar Jackson as well, these guys who are really athletic who become real quarterbacks. And it's not just their legs, it's the Tom Brady cerebral side. And then, by proxy, because of what they can do with their athleticism and those laser cannon rocket ball arms. The thing with Wentz that ever since that injury is that he's never been able to figure out who he was next. Like before the injury, he was probably going to be the MVP of the league that year. That's how well he was playing. They were rolling. Remember, it was like that non-contact. It was really bad. It was really sad. And since
he was crushing. He was like leading the league in 3rd and long completions. Everything was coming together.
And since that moment, he has just been broken and incomplete. Yeah. And what you see, like the result of that is he's not a pocket quarterback and he's not a running quarterback, and he's glitching somewhere in between.
Yeah, and I think it really did mess with his head to watch Nick Foles win it. He was like, man, maybe I'm not that good. I'm just on a stacked team. They've always talked about his confidence being low, and it still shows up after a decade in the league. This is a nice throw on the touchdown to Oliver. This is what I was talking about. Just big, smart, tough football players. This guy's going to help you in the run game as well. But if you can shut down this kind of stuff, you can keep Wentz under 17 points. Because this is how they have to move the ball.
Well, it starts up front. It starts with Cam. It starts with Harmon. It starts with TJ, right? And keeping the linebackers clean to come in like heat-seeking missiles. And we can talk as much as we want about Justin Jefferson versus pick a guy, Slay or JPJ or even Ramsey. If they just say, hey, Jalen, it's you this week, and we got Deshaun back, and we're going to rotate him and Chucky. And, Juan didn't play very much last week, right? His snaps got cut way down. Jabril looks like he's going to be a real player. So you can talk about the throwing stuff as much as you want. If Jordan Mason is having a day, I think a lot of people just expected him to be the complementary piece. O'Connell has been adamant since the offseason this is going to be a 50-50 split. Like if you drafted Aaron Jones and you didn't draft Jordan Mason, then you're paying for that now. You know, you didn't hedge your bet there in fantasy, but like even just thinking about where he came from and how that, you know, didn't they just sign Kiner as well? Didn't they go get another San Francisco guy? Because they wouldn't have anybody after, you know, Mason with Jones on IR. So as you go through the way they do business, everything starts with their ability to throw off of what they're able to do in the run game, because they want to gash you, they want to throw to their backs, they want to make you run horizontal and vertical stretch and chase 18 deep and then come back and you're tired and now you got to go chase what's 27 now, not 33. But and then Hawkinson being back at full strength and now having Oliver as well with, you know, a two-headed monster at tight end. There's a lot to like about this team. If we dictate the first and foremost, I don't think Kevin O'Connell's probably going to be the first coach to dare to challenge TJ Watt in the run game. And he's going to find a creative way to do it with a wham or a chip type look where they try to sneak something in and take advantage of his over aggressiveness. Now that he's had a game where he knows what it feels like to, you know, there's blood in the water, you know, sharks in the water, swords on deck, and TJ's hunting for more of those strip sacks. So that'll be interesting to see. Do they do? Derek Harmon played 35 snaps, 34, 35, about half the game last week. Does his pitch count go up to the point where we're seeing basically the team that we're expecting to see with Harmon now healthy and Cam in shape? So it's going to be really interesting to see if you can put this on Carson Wentz. If this is a game, I don't think Minnesota wants to see a game where Carson Wentz throwing the ball 30, 35, 40 times. I think that spells doom for the Minnesota Vikings.
All right, I was going to check on that Derek Harmon snap count. Yep, you were on it, 35, and he played really good. So if that's your first game out and he's going to get significantly better, as Y.A. Black have and most rookies do, from start 1 to start 5, there's usually a pretty big jump. I think that's the path back to respectability for this defense. Hayward, like you mentioned, Black, Harmon, Holcomb, you know, Elliott and JPJ getting healthy, Herbig blowing up, get Alex Highsmith healthy. And I hope, man, I really do. Like, I think for most football teams, you put this on tape through 3 weeks and you're like, wow, we're at least a bottom half defense. But with the amount of, you know, Hall of Famers and quality and history they have on this team, I think it's fair to continue to remain optimistic. Okay, what I was, okay, I wanted to show you just a trick play. It's just fun, and it's you know, something I want to continue to encourage teams to do. You throw it out to Jefferson.
Yeah.
You throw it back. You can't over pursue against Kevin O'Connell. He'll figure out ways to get you.
One of my favorite tweets from the past couple of weeks has been Mohamed Sanu announced his retirement, right? And he retired. He was a wide receiver who retired with a perfect quarterback rating, right? He played a lot of quarterback in college at Rutgers, right? I think in his career he was like 7 of 8 with a handful of tutties, and it's always fascinating to see these guys. And really, this is how, you know why this is happening. It's happening because winning teams are doing it. It's happening because you're seeing Ben Johnson and the Detroit Lions have so much damn fun. And then you see Ben Johnson go to Chicago and continue to do it as he's rebuilding a team from the inside out, a young developing team that needs that confidence. And then they get it in a matchup against the Cowboys last week. And they look like Tecmo Bowl, like left in A. Balls off the screen, and it's banging your head on the goalpost, looking embarrassing for Dallas. And everyone thinking, I mean, I told you Caleb Williams is going to be the NFC Player of the Week. And here we are with back to being a generational talent. It's crazy how quickly that stuff can change. That's why the Vikings do it, to change tempo in a game where they're either going to step on your throat or they need a little kick in the ass themselves. And, you know, this might be one of those weeks where if Minnesota has to go into their bag of tricks, it's because we're kicking their ass.
Okay, here's some textbook, some vintage Carson Wentz for you, and my question on this play here is, I'm going to have to walk it in from the previous play. How scared is this man here, Carson Wentz, down in the red zone, trying to make something happen for the Vikings? He just.
I mean,
right?
that literally, if you put that side by side with the play where he blew out his knee, it's eerie.
Yeah.
I
mean, I think any other quarterback in the NFL. Wow. You know, that's Daniel Jones level stuff. Just like,
well, let's be
thinking
fair.
too
That's
much.
New York Giants Daniel Jones level stuff. He's
Yeah.
Indiana Jones now. Put some respect on the young man's name.
And then he follows it up, I mean, off his back foot, and he's dropping back. I mean, that's still a nice throw for a touchdown.
He doesn't stop being 6'5", 238 with all of this stuff. It's just from play to play, he has a TBI. And like, look at that. That's falling backwards, sidearm. Like if Baker Mayfield made that throw, we'd all be dancing in the streets right now talking about his swag. But because Carson Wentz is a glitch human, we're worried that he's actually broken and maybe forgot how to play quarterback. What sucks is that if they get Mason going, because you're talking about Addison coming back, Field being there, the depth piece that they have, Hawkinson, Oliver, at all. I didn't even say Justin Jefferson. I'm just talking about the other guys. Like, do you run out of dudes who can run with their dudes? Like, that's the big question this week. Is Addison's going to have fresh legs? He might be on a pitch count. Maybe he only plays 50% of the plays, but that dude can go. Let's not forget that's a former Bolitnikoff guy. I mean, we had him here. Everybody knows at Pitt, where him and Kenny Pickett. He basically turned Kenny Pickett into a first-round draft pick. That's how good.
Quite an accomplishment.
That's how good Jordan Addison was.
Yeah.
In college. And he's been a touchdown machine. His counting stats haven't been that great, but the metrics around touchdowns per catch and playing off as a pretty elite number two to Jefferson, there's a lot to like. Then you just go, okay, well, what happens when we put pressure on that trigger man who looks like someone's pulling a trigger and is going to be incumbent upon these guys up front to the same way that we're talking about dictating to Brian Flores. They gotta really be able to dictate to Kevin O'Connell, because Carson Wentz, the quarterback in this system, is the vessel translating the beautiful mind of Kevin O'Connell. And if you can break that connection, you can just wreck this game from the jump.
You can. If you are worried that your online sports book is a Carson Wentz or a Kenny Pickett, and you'd rather have it perform like a Ben Roethlisberger or a Randall Cunningham or a Dan Marino, you want Bet Online. Referral link in the description, up to $250 in bonus bets. Fastest payouts guaranteed, unmatched game integrity. You can't mess around in this world, with the slow payouts and the games they play with you. You don't want any of that. You want to go with Bet Online. Plus, they have the poker and the esports and all sorts of monthly contests and VIP rewards, a live casino, horse racing. Bet Online's the place to be.
The ponies.
Hey, please subscribe to our stuff. We're getting some tremendous view counts on some of these videos. Yeah, we got all the watch hours, but for whatever reason, people are watching and they're not subscribing, and that's just the one ask we'd have for maybe giving back. If you want to help us grow, you can also like the video, leave a comment down below. We love talking Steelers with you throughout the day. We're constantly checking our phones and interacting with you. So we'll be back soon with more of a weekend preview and reactions to some of the stuff going down there on Steelers Twitter. For New Bear, I'm Dawson. Till next time, we'll see you on the Noll Road.